pensamiento de Vygotsky nella clase con tus estudiantes, cuando se empezó, cómo se desarrolló. Se considera importante que ellos conocen algunos elementos de la teoría.
I'll look at sort of two different classrooms. One is a classroom where I was the teacher of secondary level students, and the other will be where I'm a professor teaching in-service or pre-service teachers. When I was teaching in high school, I had a beginning. I was where the first time I was introduced to Vygotsky in my master's program, and it wasn't a very profound reading of his work, but I was able to pick up the importance of dialogue and getting to know the students. And so I started using something called dialogue journals, where every student at the beginning, and these were all English language learners, so they were writing in their second language, they would, for 10 or 15 minutes at the beginning of every class, would write in this journal about whatever they wanted to write about. And if they had problems, I would just go talk, we would have a conversation, and then I would just say, write that down. But the idea with the dialogue journal was to give them an opportunity to write about their own lives, to find their own voices, and to really create a dialogue with me, because I would write back to them, because I had over 100 students. It wasn't every single day, but I tried to get back to them at least once a week or once every 10 days. And I would respond to them and ask them questions. And I really got to know each one of those students, even though there were 100 of them, or 100 plus. I got to know them in a lot different way than had they just been a number on a seat or a name on a seating chart. And because I was able to see where they were in their writing process, I could then help them in the academic writing that we were doing to build from that writing. And in these dialogue journals, they gained a lot of confidence in their own ability to write. They gained fluency. They liked to write. And something I think very much based on Vygotsky's work. But I didn't tell them that was the rationale behind it. I did have to explain to them, because they were oftentimes in the past, they had been taught English by focusing in on English grammar, learning about the language and not learning the language by using the language. And it's a profound difference. And so their conception was, you need to correct everything I put in here, else I'm not going to learn. Over time, though, they saw that they developed a facility. And they would say, if I worry about the grammar, I can't get my ideas down on the paper. And if I just write down my ideas, I think that no one's going to understand. But they then saw that they could write and gain fluency. One young, or that her writing would block in her elbow and not get down to the paper if she worried about the grammar. And so they did come to, there was some resistance, but it was quickly overcome. And then the other level is on the teaching of teachers. And they're one of the, aside from, I teach literacy, second language literacy, and Vygotsky, I think, has some very good insights into the writing process and how theoretically the theory he has on what he calls the prehistory of the written language is an important thing for teachers, all teachers, to know, that we don't just have a child come into a classroom and we're going to teach them the ABCs, and that's going to be the beginning point of the reading. The drawing that they've done, the play that they've engaged in, is the use of symbols. hopefully their parents have read to them too, so that there is that foundation. But I use Vygotsky in that way, and I'm very I open about that. The thing I think that has been the most important for me, and I think this fits in with concept mapping, and it fits in with a project that I have, a grant that I have, a 5-year grant that's looking at helping secondary teachers across the content areas learn how they can facilitate the language and literacy development of their English language learners at the same time that they're teaching the content. And that is to focus in on concepts. That it's important for teachers to really understand the concept that they're trying to get across in a unit. And Vygotsky's work has been very, very helpful in understanding the nature of concepts and the whole development of conceptual thinking. And so I've used that with these teachers, and I let them know that it's coming, we talk about Vygotsky's work with them because these are graduate students or undergraduates getting their teaching degree. But it helps to shift for them. It's difficult. You ask about how do they react to the learning, and it's difficult for them because we really don't in education have a focus so much on the concepts. The material is there, but the teachers aren't used to saying, well, within this unit, this is the main concept that I'm trying to get across, and these are some sub-concepts that I need. And what it's forced them to do is step back from the content and more towards the students. Because if they're really focused in on the concepts and having students gain conceptual understanding, then they need to really go back to where their students are. Again, having it be student-centered and knowing where their students are in order to get conceptual understanding. One of the things I talk to them about is the difference between understanding and knowledge. A lot of our education is built up on the notion of transferring knowledge to students and having students be able to reproduce it on tests, or so that if a student gets a right answer, we think that they have an understanding, but they may just well have knowledge of something and not understanding. You can have knowledge without understanding, but you can't have understanding without knowledge. And that understanding really is the ability to apply this understanding in other situations to solve problems. And that really is the essence of education, so that it takes the focus just off of the content, getting the content across, and more a deeper conceptual understanding that the student can then use in other circumstances. And so that's been, I think, a practical application of Vygotsky's work that has been very fruitful. And it's using helping getting teachers to use concept maps has helped them to really isolate and understand the concepts. Because one of the biggest points that Vygotsky makes is that to really understand a concept, it has to be put within a system. And we don't tend to look at the systematicity of concepts when we're teaching it. It's more isolated facts, learning verbal definition without seeing how it all fits in. If you get students to begin thinking about fitting concepts in and making them aware of the process, like Alfredo was talking about, and developing systems of concepts that are related to their systems of meaning, then they are going to have their education will be far more useful, both in the coming years, but also when they get out of school.